Hello there. In today's episode of Low Effort Trash, which nobody's going to watch, I'm going to be reviewing the blacksmithing in the video game Kingdom Come Deliverance. Right off the bat, this guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's not hitting the spot he heated up. Notice how he's sending sparks flying. This means that he's either knocking off pieces of his sword or pieces of his hammer. Moving on, let's take a look at his workstation. He's got a hardy cutter and a mandrill. Both of these are very useful, real tools. I've got no idea what this third thing is, the holes in the top. Two of these are very useful, real tools. I would not place them on the same block as my anvil, because sometimes you need to work on multiple sides of your anvil. This configuration would also make it difficult for an apprentice to help you. The anvil is a spike anvil driven into a stump, which was relatively common in the Middle Ages, but the anvil's shape is weird. The spike should be straighter and less wedge-shaped, so that you're not going to be splitting apart your stump as you hammer on the anvil. One nice touch is that the stump has a band of iron to prevent just this from happening. Returning to the anvil, there are two major problems with it. First, the horn isn't round enough to be functional. Second, the face is chewed up to all heck. A blacksmith, particularly a bladesmith, wants to have a perfectly smooth anvil face, as any marks on the face of the anvil are going to be imprinted into your work. As a nice touch, the hammer is the appropriate size, and there's a bar attached to the anvil for storing tools. Unfortunately, the tools are not stored on the anvil, but rather off to the side inconveniently. Nevertheless, credit for including tools. Disappointingly, there's only one model each of hammer, file, and tongs, but all three of these seem to be fairly well modeled. Over here to the right, we've got another anvil block with some weird anvils for niche applications. This is a nice touch. Stuff like this is always useful. Beside it, a quenching pail full of water, miracle upon miracles. Unfortunately, this quenching pail is not deep enough to quench swords, while swordsmithing seems to be this man's primary occupation. Beside it, a barrel full of half-finished swords, probably not an efficient work model, but not incorrect. The forge bellows are well placed, well modeled, and appropriately sized. Unfortunately, they're the wrong type for a forge. These are single-chamber bellows. You want to have double-chamber bellows, where one side is always inhaling while the other is exhaling, so that you have continuous airflow upon your fire. On the positive side, the arm of the bellows is very well placed, and the rope hinge is a nice touch. I want to talk about the building itself, which is an absolute disaster. I could forgive there being only a back wall and that wall being kinda crummy, but the roof is just awful. It's full of holes and there's no roof peak. Even worse than that, the anvil, your most expensive, water-damageable piece of equipment, is positioned where it's not going to get really any protection from your crummy roof. Adding to that, the chimney of the forge doesn't extend above the roof peak, meaning you're not going to get great draw and it's going to be a fire hazard. This brings me to the forge proper. It's a nice model, well situated, close to the anvil. It's got tongs nearby ready to access, but unfortunately it's not correct. The ash dump is filled up with firewood, which is also inaccessible because of the way the tongs are placed. The forge has got nice open sides, which means you're not going to be limited in the length of the bar you're putting through. Unfortunately, you are going to be limited in the width of the material you're putting through because of those four supporting pillars. If we look over here, we see a wheel that someone has brought in for repairs. He cannot repair this because it's not going to fit in his forge. Immediately adjacent, we see the end product of the limitations of his setup. This wheel rim has been constructed of multiple small segments. This is wrong for wheel rims. You want a single continuous forge-welded band to hold the wheel together. It is, however, correct for what this forge would be able to achieve. You wouldn't be able to work a full rim like that. What this forge wants is for one or two of these supporting pillars to be removed so that you can work a piece of any size. Last but not least, a grinding wheel. This ought to have a water reservoir at the bottom of the wheel. It's also too small for a swordsmith. This is for sharpening, not for shaping. Good it was included, nevertheless. I think I've mentioned everything, so on to my rating. This is a difficult one to rate. It's got a lot of nice touches, but a lot of stuff that's wrong and a lot of stuff that really bugs me. Kinda like the game as a whole. I'm gonna say it's a second-rate attempt. All the other smithies in the game are just sort of copy-pasted from this one, but missing a lot of the nice little details, so I'm gonna call them third-rate attempts. Thank you for watching. I hope you found this interesting.